You are listening to Parenting Our Future with certified parent coach Robbin McManne, author of The Yelling Cure and founder of Parenting for Connection. My podcast is all about providing you with the tools and solutions you need in your parenting so you can create the family you always wanted. For more information on my book and other resources, check out yellingcurebook.com. Hey everybody, it's Robbin McManne here. You are listening to Parenting Our Future. I have a pretty cool guest. I gotta say, I keep saying that I have all these amazing guests. Well, Lisa Schaub is with me today. And I gotta tell you, she is so far one of the people who I have been dying to do a podcast with. We talked before this podcast recording, and we just had the most fun conversation, and we just, everything that we talked about was so great. So I cannot wait for you to listen to this. So let me just tell you a little bit about Lisa. She has 30 years experience as a practicing psychotherapist and 40 years experience as a freelance writer. Lisa has authored 18 self-help books for children, teens, and adults, including the international bestsellers, The Anxiety Workbook for Teens and the Self-Esteem Workbook for Teens. She has been interviewed as an expert for articles appearing in the New York Times, Scholastic Choices magazine, Teen Vogue, Psych Central, Today's Parent, Parent Circle, and the Mother Company, among others. She is all kinds of awesome, and I am so happy to welcome her here. Welcome, Lisa.
Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here and be talking to you again.
Yes. Oh, me too. You and I just had the best conversation not too long ago, and I just love everything that you have to say. And what you really talk about is about emotions and emotional health. And so I really wanted to just start right away and dive right in to why is emotional health so important?
Okay, well, it's a good question, and because not everybody knows what it is or understands it.
Yeah.
And so, well, what's that? Why do we have to deal with that? And so actually, social and emotional health is, our ability to manage ourselves emotionally, not just intellectually or physically, but to think about who we are on the inside, our relationship with ourselves, our relationship with other people, how we cope with life, our abilities to manage our emotions with ourselves or with other people. But it's the internal stuff. The 5 tenets have come up with some of our social emotional learning organizations now. One is self-awareness, which I completely agree with. That's emotional health. Self-management, how do I handle myself with my emotions too? Social awareness, how do I handle myself with other people? Relationship skills, same. And responsible decision making. And I can throw a whole lot of other things in there too, but those are some of the most dominant ones that come up. So why is this important? And my story, which I've told you before, is that you can be the smartest, straight A honors student graduating as a valedictorian from Harvard, but if you're not emotionally stable and emotionally healthy, none of that matters. You won't go anywhere because you need to be able to handle yourself as a human being in a society with other human beings. So that's why this is important. And especially because it's been somewhat neglected as far as what we're presenting to our children. And lately starting to come more into the spotlight. So educating the whole child and social emotional learning are becoming kind of the buzzwords today, which is, I'm so happy. I'm so glad. I think it's long overdue, but I'm a therapist, so.
Well, the reality is that, most parents are focused so much on our kids' education, their IQ, their education, what schools are they going to go to? What are they going to do? All of this stuff, but we're not making the connection, or haven't up until this point maybe made the connection that, if you can't understand your own emotion, if you don't have coping skills, if you can't relate to other people, be in relationship with other people, well, it doesn't matter how smart you are. If your emotional intelligence is not there, then you're going to be that person that nobody wants to be in relationship with, nobody wants to hire, nobody wants to promote, even if you do get the job, right?
Right.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
Right.
Yeah.
And we kind of talk about in the psychology field that your ability to work and to love are two main indicators of, how successful you're going to be in life and how happy you're going to be in life. And both of those involve, well, I suppose you could work all by yourself with no other people, maybe, but we always have to interact with people. And so much of our work life, and of course our love life, our relationships, whether that's a romantic relationship or a friendship, or parent-child, has to do with our ability to handle ourselves and our ability to handle ourselves with other people.
Right.
So
and, you mentioned parents, and I mean, talk about needing to be emotionally aware, to be self-aware, to be, how do you self-manage, right? How, your relationship skills, your decision-making as a parent, all of that stuff, the stakes get pretty high as a parent, right? And so we need to be evolved in that area. And up until this point, we weren't necessarily that way. So I think we need help. We need help learning how to identify our own emotions, notice our own stress, so that we can teach it to our kids too. Exactly. And we need to teach boys and girls, not just girls. That's right. That's right. Boys are so often, I sort of use these three words just to sort of blanket it, but they get sad, glad, and mad. They don't get a lot like girls do,
Right. And I think that's a good point about parents, because one, it speaks to what you just said, that we educate our children so much academically, and we're on top of that, and we're, talking to their teachers and getting them prepped for this school and that school. And I think part of that is because that's what we know, that's what we're comfortable with, that's the information we get, and we're more confident in that area. If someone said, well, let's, get on board here with taking care of your kid emotionally and getting them on a really good emotional track, most parents are kind of going, well, how do I do that? I don't know how to do that.
It's not as tangible.
Exactly. There's no guidelines. There's no, and partly we're well-versed in the academics because we have this educational system that promotes that. And as it should, we need educational learning. We need academic learning. We need to be educationally sound. But just as much, we need the emotional learning and the emotional competence. And as parents are always saying, what can I do for my kid? How can I help them? And I say the best thing you can do for your child is to be emotionally healthy yourself. And because we're the role models, and we're the ones who are in charge, and we're the ones who are influencing what they're learning and what we say is a priority. And so if we're hesitant in that area, which is normal, I mean, we're human, and we haven't necessarily gotten the education or the skills ourselves. So then how can we teach our kids if we don't have it ourselves?
Yeah. And guess what the best thing is? And you know this, and for the listeners, the best thing is IQ is set in stone, but EQ, your emotional quotient, can always grow and be nurtured, right? You can always get that. If you didn't have it, don't worry about it. It's never too late, right?
Absolutely. I have that in a number of my books. When you say that, I'm thinking, because I always talk about it's never too late to turn it around. No. And I there's so many stories of people that I know who have, had a really hard time and struggled, and then actually turned it around, and their lives have just come out beautifully. And so it's important to give our kids that hope too.
Absolutely. And so having said all of that, and I want to ask you about what we do as parents. But first, I just want to ask you about what kids are facing right now, because it seems to me, and you talk about feelings, you talk about worries, anxiety, right? That's what you have a self-esteem book and workbook for teens, and you have an anxiety workbook for teens. So tell me, why are we seeing so much anxiety in our kids, and why is their self-esteem low? So let's start with anxiety first. What is going on?
That's a good question. And those happen to be the two books that you're familiar with, but the series that these books are in, those workbooks, instant help workbooks, the publisher has a vast amount of other issues too. So it's not just self-esteem and anxiety. I also have a book on depression and other and eating disorders and stuff, but anxiety is definitely at the top these days, along with depression. And I think self-esteem is a base for so much of that. It's a foundation for how we handle those things. So, and I think, honestly, I mean, they're good books, but I also think that's one of the reasons they're two of the biggest sellers is because it's so prevalent and one really bases the other. So why is it happening, and why are there so many problems? And the anxiety and depression and suicide rates in our teens and young adults and youth are higher. I think this last statistic at U.S. News and World Report last year was suicide rate being higher than it's been in 20 years. It's peaked in recorded history. And anxiety and depression continue to rise in our kids too, not just teens, but younger kids. And there's a lot of, I read a lot of articles, I have my own ideas and talk to people. The three things that come up the most, one is our kind of scarier society these days. We have a lot of random acts of violence. We have a lot of instability. And not just that, but everyone knows about it. So a child is going to know about it. 100 years ago, which is going back pretty far, but we didn't know what was happening across on the other side of the country. We didn't have it in the palm of our hand to see pictures of it. We didn't have, and it's, I'm not saying that's all bad, but we were more protected, and there probably wasn't as much. But that's one thing. Kids don't grow up feeling safe and secure, as they may have even, 2 generations ago. Because there's just so much more going on, and because they know about it, they're aware of it.
Yeah. So it's really access to information that you're talking about. And we've made the world really small, so small that it can fit in the palm of your hand and your phone. Yes. And I know that from my own experience with my kids, I've got one son who is scared to death that he's going to get the coronavirus, right? And I mean, that's just, it's not going to happen for him, right? But you hear all of the news, it's the top story for everything, or it has been lately, and of course that's got to breed anxiety. I know I've seen it in him, it definitely does, but in general, I can see a lot of that.
Right. Everything that's happening, whether it's a natural disaster as far as, weather or hurricanes or whatever's happening, or acts of violence, or, health issues, like you're saying, physical health issues. We know about everything, and we hear every day, oh my God, there's a lot of sensationalism, and I'm not saying we shouldn't have media, but there's, I personally, I try to protect myself and stay away from it, because I don't need, I need to know what's going on in the world, yes, but I don't need to be bombarded all the time with fear. And and there's a difference between education and fear. And I do have the Good News Network feeding into my email every day. So every day, even though I'm also hearing, the stuff we need to be aware of that's going on, I'm hearing, these people helped these other people, or there was a cure found for this, or, a dog saved its master. I mean, so that's how I balance, I get a little bit of that good stuff coming in too.
That's really important. Absolutely. Because it does stress us out, and it does make us worry, and whether we like it or not, our stress is contagious. Our worries, especially our kids can feel that. Yeah, absolutely. They can feel it.
Right.
And I wonder if that's also part of the reason why there's so much anxiety, because we are the most stressed out generation too. Like parents, my fellow parents right now with kids that are still in school, we are stressed. We're doing all the things, and we feel like we have to do all the things perfectly too.
Yes. And that's huge. That's, I see that so much in parents. And one of my biggest messages to parents is, take a breath and understand that you can't be the perfect parent. That person doesn't exist. You can do your best. And it sounds so cliche, but it's true. Take care of yourself. Again, be healthy yourself, and then you can help your child. And you are going to make mistakes. There's absolutely no way around it. If you spend every moment of every day and every ounce of energy you have trying to be the perfect parent, you will fail, because it just doesn't exist. So we do what we can. And if like you're aware, you're having podcasts, you're educating people, you're coaching parents and parents who take advantage of that, that all will help. And you end up hopefully in what we call the healthy middle ground. Everybody's going to have some little issue or something to deal with, but basically they're stable and balanced. And that's what we work for.
And look, I don't think you can say it enough that it's okay. We are not perfect. Robbin McManne, parent coach, am not a perfect mother. I make mistakes too. I'm only human. And that's where self-compassion comes in, to recognize that to be flawed, to make mistakes is a shared human experience.
Yes.
And if you think the mom beside you is doing it all right, don't worry, she's not.
Exactly. And that's one of the main basis of healthy self-esteem, is that I recognize, I celebrate my strengths and I accept my vulnerabilities, and I do the same with you. So I don't say, oh, wow, that person is, the perfect parent and I'm so bad. No, but I also don't say, oh, I'm so much better than them. I recognize we're all in this together. We're all doing what we can do. And that's a huge part of healthy self-esteem, is that
I think that's
equality.
The key that you just said that I heard you say is that I recognize it in me, but I also recognize it in you.
Yes.
That is how we spread the love. That is how we change the dynamic between us as parents. I think
and that's assertive
huge.
Communication, which we kind of call the healthiest form of communication versus passive or aggressive. So that's when I recognize my right to stand up and speak my opinion. And I also recognize and respect yours to do the same. So,
and it's okay if we don't agree, right?
Yes.
It's okay.
Yes. I remember the first time someone told me that, because I was raised with parents who had emotional health challenges. So, and I remember the first time I spoke with someone and he said, well, we don't have to agree. And I just about fell off my chair. I'm like, oh my God, really? We don't? That's an amazing concept. That's not what I learned when I grew up. So anyway, those things are really important.
Well, I think there would be a lot less shame if we just allowed each other to be the best person that we can be, and whoever that is for us, right?
Absolutely.
On paper, I felt I failed. I couldn't, give birth without a C-section. I couldn't nurse my kids, and already that I was a failure, but just knowing that, look, I'm not alone. And I hear that so often just in the groups that I run and in the parents that I talk to, in the emails that I send out. People are like, I am just so happy I'm not alone.
Right, exactly. And I think that some of this, what we're talking about, also kind of translate to this, one of the second main reasons that we talk about this rise in anxiety and depression, and that's because of social media. And again, that social media isn't all a negative thing, but our kids are put into, or put themselves into, positions of such high levels of comparison. And people have been comparing themselves to others since time began. But when you are only seeing the best of someone else, which that's what they're going to put out there, and you compare yourself to that, that's when you just sink and I'm not like that, or I didn't have as many likes, or as many friends, or as many parties, or don't look like this, or whatever, and that's where we get in trouble, and that's actually cited as one of the second main reason for a lot of the anxiety and depression in kids. Is this comparison thing. And there's a great quote I have in one of the books, I can't remember it exactly, but it's something about you're comparing your outtakes to someone else's highlight reel.
Yes. Wow.
And we all have our outtakes, and we all have a highlight reel,
Well, and personally, the way we work in our brains is that we have a negativity bias. So our outtakes are what stands out for us. Yes. And then we're comparing it to someone's real, or maybe not real, highlight reel, right?
Yes.
With their
or maybe not
filters, their, all this stuff, right? Like they took that picture 17 times before they got the one that they thought they looked the best in.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah.
Yes.
I love that. Is a good quote.
And now that I'm thinking about that too, the social media part is another factor with that, is the cyberbullying and and I read somewhere, which sticks with me a lot, a kid can be sitting on the couch next to his parents watching TV at home and being bullied, like on his phone, sitting next to him or her. So that's also something, and this plays into self-esteem in a big way, because when we have healthy self-esteem, one, we don't accept the bullying, but two, we don't need to bully. So it's not what sometimes we think about healthy esteem and, oh, this child has low self-esteem and that's why there's a problem and she's being bullied. The kids who are bullying don't have healthy self-esteem, or they wouldn't need to do it.
Exactly.
Because again, if I'm confident in myself and I believe in my equality to you and everyone around me, we're all fine. We don't have to prove anything. I don't have to say I'm better than you. I don't have to build myself up by putting you down.
That's right.
So there's no need for that out of balance relationship. And that's, that's an ideal that, could that ever happen, that we all get that? I don't know, but it's the goal to strive for. And that's what I feel is the basis of healthy self-esteem is that understanding of our equality with others. So,
and maybe that's a journey, not a destination,
Well, yeah, good point.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So you sort of said instability, scarier society. You said social media, and then is there a third?
Yeah, and the third one, interestingly, that rises to the top most often is pressure to succeed. And it's pressure, and I see this every day. I shouldn't say every day, every week. But in my counseling practice, kids feel a lot of pressure to get the grades, to get into the good schools, to have, all the community service and the extracurricular activities and all the stuff that, I, as not a teenager today, when I was in high school, we just decided, I'd like to go to college if we wanted to, or whatever we're going to do after school, and after high school, we would just plan it and do it. We didn't have to have, oh, well, you better have this on your college app, and you better have this on your college app, and I don't know, I was a pretty good student, but I didn't worry and stay up nights and stress and have anxiety about my GPA. I took my ACT and my SAT tests once, and kids now are taking them 3, 4, 5 times to get that score higher and higher and higher, and they're stressing about it so much. And I got average scores on it, and I got into school, and it wasn't a big deal. It was a deal, not a big deal. But I think that's a part of it, and it's starting earlier and earlier. So I will talk to middle school age kids who are worried about grades so that they can get a good job after college. And they're 12, 13, 14 years old. They're supposed to be just out playing.
Exactly.
And they're not supposed to be thinking about this stuff yet.
So what do we do instead then? So as parents, okay, we're worried, right? We know there's competition out there. I probably have a more unconventional idea and approach to school and post-secondary school for my own family.
Yeah.
To me, to be honest, it doesn't matter to me if they get a post-secondary education in a traditional sense. Okay, so I'm just going to say that. I'm just going to go out on a limb and say that's okay. That's okay with me, because I also know that the jobs of the future may not be what is being taught necessarily in university right now. Right. So there's that. But for parents that have taken a traditional route, that have gone to high school, post-secondary, had a job, a career, a traditional sort of a journey, what do we say to them about their kids when they are worried about their future?
Yeah. And that's a good question. And first of all, I think your stance is admirable. And I think more of us need to think that way and open our minds a little bit. If our child, I had so many friends that as I was growing up even, and I see kids today that like, I really don't want to do that, Mom. I have a friend that I visited last week, and she's ill actually, and I commended her that I remember her being a really good student in high school, and her parents saying, okay, now where are you going to go to college? And, you can do this, and you can do this. And she goes, that's just not for me. It's just not for me. I want to be a wife and a mom. And
Mm.
well, they weren't opposed to that, but you need that education and you're so smart. You should be doing this. And she just stuck by her own convictions, and she ended up, and she was a wife and a mom and a wonderful one. And she also ended up sliding into a career that was just perfect for her skills and her talents and her passions. And she didn't need that education. And I'm not saying that that happens with everyone, but it's absolutely possible. It's absolutely possible. And, you know, so that, first of all, I think we need to be open to helping our children find themselves, because if you are using your natural talents and skills, there's a greater chance you're going to be successful at what you do than if you are pushing yourself into a career choice, whatever that may be, that requires extra schooling or not, that is not what you're naturally, you know, cut out to be, because you're not on the path that's right for you. And I'm sure there's exceptions to that, but I've seen that over and over again. So
yeah. And I think what parents are doing is, and with the best intentions, but what we're doing is we're living in the future and we're not looking at the child that we have right now. So yes, right? Yes. Have an eye to the future. Sure. Of course. We don't want to, you know, negate that that's coming, but if you're only living in the future, you may miss what's happening with your child right now.
Yes,
right?
exactly.
And and you may miss that they're saying, I don't even want this, mom, dad.
Yes.
Right.
And if you're paying attention to right now, you're teaching your child to do that too. And that's where self-awareness comes in. So, I'm not, if I'm in the future, which doesn't exist actually right now,
right.
Then am I paying attention to myself, to my emotions, to my likes and my dislikes, or am I just being programmed or thinking I need to program myself because this is what I should do or have to do? And so that takes away our ability to have self-awareness. Self-awareness exists in the present moment because we only exist in the present moment. So I'm really glad you brought that up. That's a huge part of it. And it also speaks to the difference between planning and worrying.
Yes.
Planning for the future, yes. Okay, I have to plan ahead to buy groceries so that I can cook tomorrow's meal or whatever. But I don't need to worry about it. So I plan for, here's some things you could do in the future, but we don't have to make them like the most critical thing. Like, oh, if you don't do this, if you don't get this done or this grade or this, you know, that's,
it's like catastrophizing it in your head, or
yes, we're
just blowing
instilling
it out.
fear.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely. Yeah. Worry is based in fear. Planning is proactive. It's
yes.
Yeah, absolutely. And I also think too that, look, for parents that are in this space where, you know, they're thinking about their child's future when they're young, when they're even single digits, like 8, 9, you know, and I'm sure you would say the same thing, is I would want everybody to just take a moment and check in with yourself, right? This is that self-awareness piece you talk about too, but check in with yourself and say, is this about my child or is it about me?
Yes.
Is it that I want this for them?
Yes.
Do they even want this? What do they want? Right. Like, you know, and I've had parents say, oh, well, don't take that away from me. And I'm like, but it's not yours anyway.
Yes.
Be taken away from you.
Yes. Very good point. Very good point. And I think parents have done that since the beginning of time, that we want, not necessarily consciously, but we want the best for our kids. And we want, if there's something that we wanted or that we didn't have, oh, well, they can have that. I want it for them.
Yes, yes. Of course, we have the best intentions. Yes.
Right. And part of that comes from the best intentions and loving our children, but part of it also comes, often unconsciously, from our still wanting that ourselves. And that's okay. You can be sad that you didn't ever have that, but that doesn't mean it's right for your child.
No.
Your child is a different person from you.
Absolutely. And I have a client. I was so happy. I was like literally jumping up and down because she said, you know what? I've given up trying to get my kids to play the piano. So I started taking lessons. I was like, yes, that's exactly right.
Perfect. Yes. That's exactly the perfect example of that.
Yeah, if you want it so bad, just do it yourself.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Very,
Oh,
very true.
so funny. Okay, so let's so we really have these three reasons why kids' self-esteem is suffering.
Yeah.
And from the self-esteem is where we get caught with anxiety, right? Is that
Well, and not just the self-esteem. I think the anxiety comes from it's kind of a circle, because
okay?
if we have anxiety, if we're feeling
Mhm.
anxiety about social pressure or future pressure or fears of our safety, and that brings up anxiety, that can lead to depression because we're
Mhm.
scared all the time, or we can't manage the anxiety, so then we feel hopeless and helpless. Also, if we don't, that can affect our self-esteem. So I'm just starting with anxiety for this one. So if I'm having panic attacks, so I'm embarrassed, or I don't know what to do about that, or I think there's something wrong with me, and
Mm.
then I feel bad about myself. So if I have a solid sense of self-esteem, I can recognize that having anxiety or experiencing anxiety doesn't mean there's something wrong with me. It's a condition. It's like if I have an allergy to strawberries, it doesn't mean, oh, I'm a bad person or I'm not good enough, or it's just a condition. It's what is. I might be able to work on that allergy to strawberries. I might not. I can often work on my anxiety and have things get better to some degree,
Mm.
more so for others, but
Okay. So can I ask you then, one of the things that I know, and I hear parents worry about this with their kids. And these are kids that I don't feel are necessarily impacted by the social media or instability or
uh-huh.
the pressure to succeed as much. But, a 5-year-old saying, "Oh, I'm so stupid, I hate myself."
Ah,
Or where does that come from?
yeah, yeah.
So early.
Yes, I know. A lot of that is our self messages, so that is a self message. I'm so stupid, I
Mhm.
hate myself. So that's
Mhm.
something I'm telling myself. Where do we get those messages from? A lot of our messages come from the people around us. So our family, our friends, our relatives, our neighbors, etc. A lot of them come from our culture and society.
Mm.
And we take, we're not born thinking I'm so stupid, I hate myself,
Yeah.
right? Um, so we hear things or we compare,
Mm.
and a lot of that is that comparing, trying to figure out who I am. And that's why we compare too. Who am I? Well, I'm going to look at you and see who you are, and what am
Mhm.
I like compared to you? And there's nothing wrong with that. That's kind of how we figured out. But it's that negativity that's so harsh and that we don't want to have. So like in the self-esteem workbook, there's a number of exercises that talk about your authentic self. So who are you before you got any messages from
Mm.
your parents, your family, your friends, society, your culture? When you look on the internet or social media or even watch TV. You don't have to be on social media at 5 years old you're watching TV, or you're watching Hulu, or you're playing games or something, and you're already comparing, and you're still getting messages.
Mhm. Mm.
So it's what do we do with those? And there are also, chemically, there are different chemical and genetic patterns that make us more prone to depression, more prone to anxiety.
Mhm.
The 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 depressed brain, or the brain prone to depression, has a harder time pulling away from negativity. So
Mhm.
there's an
Mm.
average person might have something happen to them and they go, oh, that was bad, but well, okay, I'm going to go on and do this and not think about it. Someone with a brain chemistry that is prone to depression has a much harder time letting go of that, and their neural patterns want to go back and back and back to that negative
Mm.
experience, to that negative message, and it's harder for them to pull away.
You're currently listening to Parenting Our Future. I'm parent coach Robbin McManne, and I hope you're enjoying the show so far. Did you know that by the age of 6, many girls believe that they're less smart than boys? And only 19% of children's books showcase women with jobs or career ambition? As a parent, are you looking for stories to inspire your little girl to pursue her dreams without limits? Well, Goodnight Stories for Rebel Girls podcast is an expansion of its best-selling book, which tells hundreds of bedtime stories about the lives of extraordinary women from the past and the present. Designed to close the confidence gap in young girls, these stories explore the talent and results of incredible women across every possible field, from astronauts, chefs, trombonists, judges, scientists, and tennis players, from Jane Goodall to Simone Biles. So to inspire the rebel girl in your life, go and find Goodnight Stories for Rebel Girls on your favorite podcast player. Now, back to the show. There is a graph that I use that is from Sonia Lubaninsky on the How of Happiness. I don't know if I said her name right or not.
Okay.
I
don't know.
Pretty much guarantee that I did not. This is, it shows a graph of, it's a circle graph, pie graph of happiness, and 50% is dictated by your genetics. 10% is your life experience. So whether you're married or not, or in a relationship or not, whether you're educated, whether you have money, whether you're healthy or not, and 40% is dictated by the internal state of your mind. So your mindset. Right?
Absolutely.
You're choosing your thoughts and that sort of thing. But I think that it's really, I'm so glad that you brought up the genetic side of thing, because I think maybe that is the piece that is an important one, is that your mind may, just because of genetics, chemically be tilted towards more of be more susceptible to be more negative or depressed or that
Absolutely.
sort of thing.
But the good news is that that can be changed. As neuroscience tells us now, which we've known for some time now, our brains are what they call plastic. So as long as we are alive, we can make those changes. So even if you've got that genetic base, it can be changed. Some people, absolutely. For some people, it's a lot harder than others. But that is what medication and psychotherapy are about, because both medication and psychotherapy affect those chemicals and help you to shift away from that extreme, whatever that is for you.
Oh, that's very cool.
Yeah, and then that's what people need to know. It's you're not stuck with what you've got.
Right. That's so great. And so that your ability to be happy and to have strong self-esteem and manage your anxiety and all that, there's hope for everybody.
Absolutely. And so when you said 40% thoughts, I'm a huge proponent of using our thoughts, because they're so powerful. And that our thoughts, our self-esteem is what we think about ourselves. That's a thought. It's not what someone else tells us, what someone else thinks about us. I mean, everyone in the world can say we're the best person out there, but if we don't think that, it doesn't matter. They can say we're the worst person out there. And if we don't think that, it doesn't matter. So again, our thoughts are so powerful. And I teach people that self-esteem is in your hands. You're not stuck not liking yourself. You're not stuck because, somebody told me this a long time ago, or my teacher said I'd never amount to anything. Okay. That was a sentence that came in, and your ears picked it up. But now it's, and as children, we don't have necessarily even the cognitive power, but certainly not the cognitive awareness to question that. But as adults, we do. So we can say, like, okay, well, now I'm 20, 30, 40. Do I want to keep that thought? Do I want to stick with that and have it keep driving my bus forever? Or do I want to go, oh, well, no, actually I don't, maybe I'll just shoot that one down. And we have the ability to do that as adults. It doesn't mean you can snap your fingers and it's gone, but we do have that ability. So
yeah, absolutely. And I mean, who knew we could question our thoughts, right? And our thoughts are not facts. I'm passionate
Absolutely.
about that. And
Absolutely. Me too.
also, yeah, and also, you can change your thoughts, you can think a new thought. But
Yes.
the problem that we get into is that our brain, unfortunately or fortunately, I don't know, depending on whether the thought is positive or negative, is it goes in search of proving it to be true for us too,
Yeah.
right? It's like when you see
Yes.
that one car on the street that you never saw before, and then you see 5 of them. It's like, oh
Yes.
no, they're everywhere. Well, if I think I'm stupid, then I'm going to just mentally tick off things where I
Right.
feel that like life has shown me I'm stupid.
Right.
But if you can say I am a work in progress
Yes.
instead, or something like
Yes.
that,
And
and
that's
then
a
it's
thought. That's a thought. That's a different thought to
a
choose. I'm
different
a
thought.
work in progress.
Yeah.
And understanding, that's one of the best things. And this is social emotional learning. We need to teach our kids exactly what you just said. That, you know, even though we have this thought, it doesn't mean it's permanent or that it's real. And that's so important to teach children. I have kids sit in my office all the time, and they go, but, this, and they say it, I go, okay, that's a thought. I said, if I told you, say I'm working with a 15-year-old little blonde girl, and I say, if I told you you were an 8-foot tall basketball player in the NBA, you could have that thought. You say that. And she's, I'm an 8-foot tall basketball player in the NBA. Okay, you're having that thought, right? Is it true? And they go, oh, well, of course not. It's not true. And they laugh. But that's the point.
Yeah.
So many thoughts come into our minds. When we understand and when we're educated that, okay, this is what's happening, but I have a choice about what I want to do with that. That's so empowering. And that's one of the things that helps with our children, is we need to empower them to understand that they can make changes in their self-esteem, in their anxiety levels, their depression levels, whatever it is. They can make changes, and it's not permanent. And we need to give them that hope and dispel that helplessness and hopelessness, because that's what eventually leads to, I can't tolerate being alive anymore.
Yeah.
I don't have any hope. Why, there's nothing I can do. But
What
there's
do you do in those cases where you are a parent who is trying to work with them through a difficult time, a dark time, but they reject the facts of that, the fact that you can change your thoughts? What if they just out and out reject that? Do you just keep trying, or is there a better way? Like, what would you do?
That's hard. And that it kind of depends on what's happening in that child's life. And their brain may be rejecting that. If they're not open to hearing something different, it's a lot harder. Sometimes I can't work with people unless they are on some kind of medication, because that allows their brain to get to a point where we can work on their thoughts.
Yeah, right.
And I'm not saying, oh, well, put the kid on meds right away, but
know.
sometimes that's the answer. And sometimes you really do need the professional help. You don't always, but sometimes you do, because sometimes also just being in the role of the parent works against you, and they need to hear something from an outside person.
It's like above your pay grade, basically, right? Like, this might be too much for you to handle.
Definitely sometimes. And also, just because you're the parent, sometimes they just automatically shut that down.
Yeah.
I mean, parents see this all the time where, they're telling their kid something over and over and over again, and the kid doesn't listen. And then they come home one day and say, hey, you know what? Mrs. So-and-so said this, or, my mom's friend said this, and I think it's a great idea. And you're like, well, I've told you that 7,000 times,
Exactly.
but you're not going to listen to me, right?
Yeah. Well, we all know kids don't do what we say, they do what we do.
And yes, and that's the argument for modeling. And that's the whole thing about, what can I do for my child? Be healthy yourself. Find your own emotional health, your own emotional balance. If we're not in control of our own emotions, not that you are every minute of the day, that's impossible. But if you're not balanced and stable yourself, how can you possibly expect your child to be that way? Or how can you teach them? And so so much of it comes back to us. And if we are struggling, which we're all human, then we need to work on ourselves too. And there's nothing wrong with that. And there's nothing wrong with working on it as a family, or saying, I think our family really needs some work on handling anger, or handling overwhelm. How do we do that? So I think we need to make that a priority, because we say that to our kids. I think you need to get a math tutor, or I think you need to work on your spelling a little extra. We also need to be talking to them about, let's work on what you do when you're that upset, instead of having a tantrum or throwing yourself on the floor. So we need to be talking about emotional health and making it more of an everyday, normal conversation, a normal topic, which will also helps when a child then has a problem and they don't feel ashamed of it. And they go, oh yeah, we were talking about this at home, or we were talking about this in school. Or my dream is that we have emotional education or social emotional learning just like we have physical education. Because, it was back in the 1800s, somebody figured out, physical education is really helpful for academic learning. And now physical education, PE, every kid has PE, right? Yeah. Because we understand that it's important for our well-being, our overall health. Well, same thing with emotional education. I hope I live to the day when kids talk about their EE class versus their PE class. I have emotional education right now. And they get that just along with everything else, because it's part of being a balanced human being. And right now, things are not that balanced.
Yeah. And one of the things that I talk to about the parents that I work with, and really I tell anybody that'll listen, and it sounds a little corny, but what I say is I speak in the language of feelings and needs with my family and my kids. I will say things like, I am overwhelmed today. I am so busy. I had so many things on my plate today that I'm sorry if I'm not very responsive, or I'm sorry if I sound grouchy. Please know that it's not you. It's not your fault. It's me. And I'm just struggling. Right.
Yes. Yes.
And I talk to my husband that way too. And, sometimes I'll cry and I'll just say, look, you guys, I'm sorry. And then they do it to me too. Which is really helpful, because then I can help you. Once we start talking about it, then I can say, okay, you're scared. Okay, you're nervous.
Yes.
Okay, you are frustrated. You're mad.
Yes.
That I can work with. How do we work that out? And then once we deal with that, then it goes to what you were saying. Then it's like, let's practice the skills that we need then.
Yes.
How do we deal with this when we're angry? What is the solution, right?
Yes. And that's modeling. That's exactly what I'm talking about. So you're modeling for them that it's okay to have emotions, and you're modeling labeling. I have like a 4-step feeling plan. So step 1 is I label it. I name it. This is what I'm feeling. So like you said, I'm feeling overwhelmed. I'm feeling upset, whatever that is. And then number 2 is accept it. It's okay. It's always okay to feel anything that we feel. So when we get messages like, oh, well, you shouldn't be angry, or you have no right to feel that, or why would you feel that? We got to throw those out and accept every feeling we have. Now, it's not okay to do something with that feeling that hurts yourself or hurts someone else. But we always have to start by saying, this is what I'm feeling, and that's okay. And then the third thing is, how do I express that? Emotion is something we experience emotion physically in our bodies, and we need to release that in order to bring that's emotional regulation. That's a lot of what this book is about, is emotional regulation. And where do I go with that? So like what the book has is, we have breathing, and we have visualization, and we have coloring, and we have collaging, and we have just anything that helps you release music, release something in a healthy way. Or you have a calm down corner in your house where you've got paper and crayons and scissors and the Nerf bats, or anything that helps your kids.
And that's just for the parents.
Yeah, but that's, you're joking, but seriously, parents can model that. So a parent says, I am feeling so angry right now. I just had this really hard day at work. I'll see you in a minute. I'm going to the calm down corner.
Yeah.
And your child learns that. They learn it's okay to feel something. And here's what I do when I'm having a big feeling. So I have to find a healthy way to express it. And then number 4, I do something to take care of myself. What do I need right now? Do I need to cry? Do I need a hug? Do I need to just go get under the covers for a little while? Do I need to watch some funny cat videos or puppy videos or something to get me back on track, to take care of myself? So I label it, I accept it, I express it in a healthy way, and then I recenter myself by doing something to take care of me. And, and this is stuff we can teach our children, just like we teach them how to make sandwiches or drive cars or throw laundry in the hamper. We teach them how to tie their shoes. We can teach them how to manage their feelings. It's just that we don't realize that because we don't think we know ourselves, or we go, well, how would I do that? Again, social emotional learning, this is something that we need to be helping parents with, because and sometimes you know a lot more than you think you do. That's another thing. We're not just all emotionally inept at all, but sometimes we just don't realize what we do.
Yeah.
That's where the saying, well, count to 10, that's been around forever. But do you realize why we do that? Because when you stop and count to 10, you're removing yourself from the situation, you're taking a break. These are coping skills, and we need to teach our kids those.
Yeah, and connection to your breath is so easy and
Yes.
so immediate, and we know it calms you down.
Yes.
And I talk about square breathing all the time, and I have to tell you the cutest little story.
Yes.
I have a client, and I talk to them about box breathing, right, where you draw a square basically in the air or on a paper or whatever, and you're breathing in for 4, hold for 4, breathe out for 4, hold for 4. Well, they talked to their daughter, and she's young, she's 4, and they said, you can even pick your shape, because I said, look, she can do a triangle, whatever, and so she does a heart. She does one side of the heart to breathe in and the other side of the heart to breathe out, and it works. Is that not the cutest thing ever? I just love it.
That's wonderful. And that's that's empowering. Then the child learns, I can manage my emotions. I can tolerate discomfort. And here's what I can do to help calm myself down. And that's what they need to do. We need to help our kids understand that they can do that. They can calm themselves down. And the breath especially. So I tell people, do you think? Do you breathe? And they're like, well, yes. I mean, no one's ever said no so far. And and I thought, if you breathe and you think, you have 2 of the most powerful tools for managing emotions, for tolerating discomfort, for handling overwhelm, for anything. And the good news is, because we don't want to be bothered with something that takes up too much time. Well, guess what? Your breath, you have it there with you. Your thoughts too. They're there all the time. You don't have to go out and get them. You don't have to find the right size. You don't have to remember to put them in your backpack. You've got these things with you and in you. And it's just as simple as you just said, as just, I need to do my shape now because I'm feeling this. And so I'm going to make my little heart. And within minutes, you can be centered and balanced again. Those kinds of things. I'm so glad you're teaching parents.
Yes. Yeah. Teaching them so that they can teach their kids too, because, with all of this, self-esteem as parents is low. Right? We do feel like we're failing. And this kind of brings us right around to the beginning of what our conversation started at is, parents, we do feel like we're failing. We do feel like we're not doing it right, that we have this idea of this perfect parent that we are supposed to be, and that does not exist.
Right.
And it is absolutely, who wants that anyway? We're flawed human beings, and we need to accept it and love ourselves.
But that speaks to our own self-esteem.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So again, celebrating my strengths and accepting my vulnerabilities and accepting that I can't do anything perfectly, actually, and embracing imperfection and the thought that imperfection is good enough. Because that's all we've got. We actually don't have perfection, so we better darn well be okay with imperfection, and helping our kids know that from day one.
And what's really funny is that if you were the perfect parent, everybody would find flaws in that, and everybody, you know what I mean? Like that's it's such a It's just not real. It's not
Yes.
real. Let's stop
Yes.
it. There is no such thing as perfect.
Right.
Celebrate your strengths and accept your vulnerabilities.
Right. And compare, if you're going to compare to yourself 6 months ago, 2 years ago. Am I making progress? Strive for progress, not perfection. That's another good thought, because absolutely, it's not, we don't want to just sit here and go, oh, well, can't do it perfectly. Oh, well, so what, if I screw up. Well, yes, you accept your imperfection, but also that doesn't mean you stop striving, working.
Absolutely.
Without intense pressure,
Yeah.
And
Well,
when we're compassionate with ourselves like that, that's in the Self-Esteem book too, is the power of compassion. Because when we're compassionate with ourselves, we know forgiveness, self-forgiveness, and self-acceptance. And then if we say, oh, okay, well, I didn't do that perfectly, but that's okay. Now I'm going to try this next. That allows us to try this next. If we say, oh my God, that was terrible, I always screw up. Do we want to try again? No, because we feel like failures. Well, I'm always a failure. I can never do anything right. So then that doesn't encourage us.
And what's really funny about that is, at what point did we decide that failure or not doing something right the first time meant failure?
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
What if
Good
we
point.
were babies? What if our babies, as they tried to make a step, were like, screw it.
Yes.
I'm the worst baby in the world. I can't even walk.
Yes, yes. I use that as an example for kids all the time. I'm so glad you brought that up, because I messed up again. I said, let's think about all the things you've succeeded in. Do you walk? And they're like, well, of course I walk. I go, okay, how long did it take you to get walking? Did you do it the first time? When you fell over off the couch the first time, or when you were hanging on to something, did you say, oh, well, all right, not going to do that again? No, you tried again. You can tolerate discomforts. You have perseverance. You have, the first time you tried to put food in your mouth, did you get it in? Probably not. But that doesn't mean you gave up. Now you're doing it. It's going right in there.
Yeah.
Yes, perfect.
And it's just a little like cute little reminder, like, okay, you're right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. I need to just let myself off the hook.
Right.
Wherever we got this idea that everything needs to be easy and perfect, and it's got to go out the window, because we're causing so much pain, anxiety, and stress.
Right.
And boy, do we deserve more joy in our lives, more love, more happiness, right?
Yes.
That is really who we are as humans. That is what we're all trying to get to: peace, harmony, joy.
Right.
And so let's use the tools that you're talking about. And I just want to and so my podcast, you probably can't see me and Lisa here if you're listening on a podcast platform, but this is also on YouTube, so you can see us talk. Okay. But the book that we have been talking about, one of them is Put Your Feelings Here, but you have Put Your Worries Here. You have the Self-Esteem workbook for teens, the anxiety workbook for teens, and like you said, you have so many other books: depression, all different topics. You have a lot of books, but what you have here, and I'm gonna just open it up. What you have here is pages with questions and statements for our kids to fill out for themselves, right? And they're thought-provoking questions and statements.
And the goal, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I was just thinking, the goal when we talk about empowering is to help kids understand, because if they do any of the activities in this book, and some of them are questions, and you have to think about things. Some of them are just collage your feeling, or distraction is a way to regulate emotions. So we have one about plan the ultimate party, or trace your elbow on this page and write things about it. I mean, really? But if you do that, is your overwhelm going to go down? Yes, it is. And so anytime you follow one of these prompts, and you can feel your overwhelming emotion go down a little bit, it's so important to know, I did that myself. I didn't even have to go to a therapist. I didn't even have to, follow some rule. I have the ability to manage my emotions, to manage my overwhelm, to get my intense emotions down to a better level. So I can do that. And that's, again, there's hope. There's help. I have the ability to do this myself. And some of this stuff, it doesn't have to be some intense theory that we're following. It can be have fun. It can be, listen to your music and become the music. There a lot of the prompts in there are just they're feel good things, and they are joyful things.
Yeah. It's funny you just mentioned that. I was telling my son on the weekend, I said, you know what makes me, I was singing along to a song that I like. And I said, you know what actually makes me really happy is when I have a song that I really love and I sing to it really loud, it actually makes me really happy. So poor kid had to listen to me sing, but that's okay. But it does, like, it totally makes me happy.
Yes. And that is modeling for your child. You're saying, here's something that I do, whether you realized it or not, that brings up this emotion in me. Here's something that makes me feel good.
Yeah.
And you recognize that. And the other thing, when you do that, and whatever book you use, if it's my books or other books, when you see, oh, I can do this, you also, we want the kids to build a skill set to use in the future. So if you're doing prompts in this book that have you breathing, or that have you visualizing, you're on vacation in your absolute favorite place with your absolute favorite people, and your emotional intensity goes down. Or if you're writing out your frustrating thoughts, and then you're taking this page and ripping it out and making confetti out of it, and your emotional intensity goes down, you can remember, oh, that's what helps me. So I can use that again. So they're building a skill set, whether it's working with their thoughts, their breath, visualization, poking holes in a page to do something.
Oh, I love it. Yeah. And I'll leave on this one note, because I think that what so many of us are thinking is that as parents now who haven't had this experience of social emotional learning in our past, haven't been taught this, is that we're saying, I wish I knew this earlier. I wish I knew this when I was younger.
Yes.
So here is the chance to give it to your kids now. And you grow too. You grow too. You learn too. And I've done a lot of work. That's why I know this stuff. I've done a lot of work on myself. And I know how much happier I am, how much more joy I have in my life. Doesn't mean everything's always sunshine and rainbows, but it's pretty good. So it's worth it. It's worth it.
Yeah. It's not always sunshine and rainbows, but when we don't have sunshine and rainbows, we need to know that we can tolerate that.
That's right. Yes. And this will, that this too will pass, and I can tolerate discomfort. And I think you keep saying that, and I'm really hearing that we can tolerate discomfort. Because the funny thing is that I think that when we look at making changes, we might be resistant because that's uncomfortable. But we're already uncomfortable here. So why not choose a new thing, a new thought, something else to get us to the light, to get us to feeling free and joy.
Exactly.
Oh, beautiful.
All good points.
This was such a lovely conversation. Do you have any last words for us?
Oh my gosh. My last words are, I could talk for 2 more hours, because what you're talking about is so important, and I'm really glad that you are doing what you're doing, and that you invite people like myself, not that I have all the answers by any means, but that you're educating parents, and that we're getting the word out there that this is important, that our children need to learn these things. So I just, keep going. Encourage you.
Well, thank you. And thank you to all the parents listening who want to show up differently for their kids, who want to do this in a different way. Really, it's all you. It's all about the parents listening right now. I love each and every one of you who listen and who want to be a better parent, who want to help their kids be the best they can be, and for you to feel good about who you are as a parent too. So Lisa Schaub, I'm going to put all of the information about your super cool books. Really, everybody listening, please know that you've got to look at them. They are full of graphics and fun. Really, they're like journals, and like I said, thought-provoking and fun and really interesting. I really hope that you will look into them as well. They are so good, and wherever we can get the help, we should take it. So thank you so much, Lisa. All of your information will be there, and thank you for sharing your wisdom with us.
Great. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you for listening to this edition of my podcast, Parenting Our Future. I'm parent coach Robbin McManne, and if you're enjoying this podcast, please share it with someone who you think might also need to hear this message. And don't forget to subscribe, and if you like my work, I would be grateful if you gave me a 5-star rating. For those of you who like my content and want more, visit me at yellingcurebook.com to get your copy of my book and to find other resources to help you. Until next time, I am wishing you and your family peace and